Greetings, warlords. Welcome to Saga Thursday, the show all about the skirmish miniatures game from Studio Tomahawk. I am joined this time by JP. JP, how's it going, my man?
Good, good. Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, we haven't seen you for a while, but you've been on quite a few episodes over the many years here. And folks that don't know or remember, you're Hercus Monty, which kind of turned in the activation phase podcast. So you guys are currently working your way through the Crusades here, right?
Yeah, we just started the Crusade, so I think we've been going for about 2 years now on the podcasting side, working our way through Age of Invasions, Alexander, Hannibal, Vikings, and then now Crusades, plus some kind of random episodes about tournaments and stuff like that. But pretty much following the Saga Thursday tried and true method of walking through the board, the battle board.
Yeah, the topic. I mean, those topics just make themselves, JP.
Indeed,
it's not science, but
they keep publishing them. We just have to handle them. So
that's right. And so I think you slow down a little bit just to make sure that you'd be ready to jump to chivalry after the Crusades have gone through. So I think that's a smart move. Are you sweating now? You guys have a chivalry tournament lined up, and the book is still not released. How are you feeling about that? We're recording August 9th.
Yeah, no, originally the tournament was for September. So I have since then shifted the tournament till 2025 in January, end of January. So
okay, that's what I thought. I saw the January date.
Yeah, I have no information of whether or not this will be realistic, but it's going to be a combined chivalry and Crusades tournament.
There you go. Yeah, you got the fallback. Everybody's got to have
fallback, so that's fine.
There you go.
So hopefully, yes. I think everyone's ready for it. Lots of people very hyped about it, painting armies, everything else. So I'm looking forward for.
That's true. I think a lot of people will be ready to go, judging by the Saga Thursday Warband Challenge. A lot of chivalry warbands being painted up. People are kind of chomping at the bit. It's been a while since we've had a Saga release, so I think we're definitely a little overdue. It's been, I don't know, we really haven't had this kind of length between releases.
Yeah, I think it's the first year they've skipped a year as well in terms of book releases.
People are chomping at the bit, but in the meantime, we've got plenty to talk about here. So on the screen here, we're spitballing beforehand, trying to think of like what the title for this video should be. So my initial thoughts was, how many warbands do we own? But really, we're kind of talking about Saga's, maybe any historical game, the unique battle mode mechanic, which means you can use your Vikings potentially also as Yam's Vikings, so you're kind of getting two factions out of one. And I think you came up with the title. You're attributing this to Monty, but what are you calling it?
I'm 100% sure Monty at some point discussed it, and he's the philosophy of paint one, play many warbands. So
that is a video title if I've heard one. So I think we'll go with that. So people clicking on the video probably already saw that, but so it's not measuring our Saga Schwanzenstück is here of how many warbands we painted. Clearly yours is much longer than mine. You have many more warbands. Once you shared that folder, I was like, I remember kind of seeing all of these at some point when you posted pics, but seeing like, how many years have you been playing Saga, painting warbands?
Playing Saga since 2015, once Fantasy Battles died. I think it's kind of like the usual, where a lot of people joined Saga at that point. And then I think I really went on a different trajectory around 2018 when version 2 came out. Then I basically just completely switched to Saga as my main game.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think version 2 was a more complete, a full game where with first edition was good. It was fun. But if somebody only played Saga, I'd be like, okay, yeah, good for you. You know, kind of a weird little niche thing, but I felt like second edition really rounded it out and turned it into a full game, and you kind of had a roadmap of where everything was going to go. So that makes sense. But so 2015, I don't know if your year math is messed up as mine,
so
but it
I
seems
can't
like
remember exactly when in 2015, but yeah, we're coming on 9 years,
yeah,
potentially 10 years of painting warbands.
yeah. So 2024, I guess my internal math puts 2015 like 2 years ago perpetually. I'm always pre-COVID now from all my date calculations and my getting grayer here as I age. But yeah, 9 years, and that's probably I have to look back. I got about 9 or 10 years as well. Saga Thor's. I should look. I think coming up on 10 years worth of videos. So let's not dilly or dabble any further. We can get into the meat and potatoes here. So we're going to go back and forth until I run out of war bands, and it'll just be JP probably. We're going to talk a little bit about the war band, share some picks, and then we'll kind of muse over the potential here for what the war bands can be used for. And I think we'll find it's shades of gray. You know, where I draw the line, well, it'll probably be different from JP. Will probably be different from you folks. And I know I'll just state outright right now that my background is fantasy and stuff like that. So as far as historical accuracy and speaking to that, I'm probably not going to be the best. I feel JP's got a leg up on me there, but you know, sure people will have comments about what is suitable if they're going to get really nitpicky. But all right, let's jump into it. And do I have the right pick queued up here? All right, so we're starting with my last much maligned last Romance warband. So this is the oldest warband I own at this point. I painted one before it that I called the Men of Wessex, which was kind of an Anglo-Saxon force using the old Wargames factory, and you know, the word polishing a turd is applicable to that very much so. I got rid of those. So these were actually built for first edition, and I think the just Byzantine board, and I did get to play it at Adepticon. It was right around, I finished them basically when second edition came out. And so the last Romans board actually kind of worked well for it. This was kind of a speed paint-ish project. So the Men of Wessex, I use all different kinds of colors and stuff. So I wanted uniforms, so I could use the same red, blue, kind of speed through it. I did use the airbrush a little bit, my Iwata Eclipse. Did some undershading, didn't really work very well. This warband used a dip. I dunked these dudes in the can and pulled them out, and I think that's the last warband models I did with the dip, and yeah, worked out pretty well. So I use these as last Romans, and at the time there was no Fireforge stuff, so this predominantly was Gripping Beast. So there's Dark Age Warriors for the levy there. Maybe you could recognize them, JP. Maybe you could. The late Romans are the Gripping Beast late Roman. I think that's what it's called, the late Roman infantry.
Yeah, I think that's basically like the big box with.
You get some archers, you get some spear dudes. Some have chainmail, so I just used kind of the cloth bodies. I picked up their metal cav. And so I did some conversions on here with the helmets and stuff. I tried to make them look like a little later than that. So instead of like 300 era, maybe go 6 or 7 or 800. Was the idea, you know? I don't I accomplished that, but that was the idea. So I can use these as last Romans, and I think this will demonstrate kind of the trouble of running multi-war bands, because I don't know, JP, I think I could use these in invasions as like Eastern Romans. I don't know. What do you think there?
I would 100% be fine with running them as Eastern Romans. I think the kind of like the gripping beast box Romans, they're pretty vague in what time period they're supposed to be set in anyway. People who know something about Roman equipment kind of say that the equipment that they put in the box is a little bit all over the place, especially the helmets.
Sure.
So I think
Yeah,
the baseline is pretty low anyway. So I think the vibe definitely comes across. I also remember distinctly when you made a video about converting these models.
Yeah, there's some videos about these.
Yeah,
Many
I
many years ago.
remember you use like paper to make their little like neck kind of little
Yeah,
cloth
I gave them
covers,
all like little, I don't know,
like
whatever
against the
the
sun or
French
something. But yeah,
French legionnaires wear them too. You know, the little
yeah.
draping thing off the back of the helmet. So I really liked that and kind of made them distinct. What do you think if I use these as Byzantines in Age of Crusades? Is it?
I've seen people use the Romans box for Byzantines. Personally, it's a little bit too far, but however, I think the options are quite limited. Fireforge still has like a very old box of infantry, which are for the Byzantine kind of Crusades era, late Viking era. But yeah, I think it would pass. But I've also I'm not sure how I would feel about it. I think what really helps is that they are painted incredibly well, and that kind of gives people a pass. I've seen, because people like seeing well painted armies on the board.
Yeah,
and it looks like you've put in a lot of effort, and it's also a little bit of a shame to put in so much effort and not put it on the board consistently. So I think I would give you a pass if that's what you're asking, Rodge.
Okay. Yeah, and so yeah, great points. I will say, for anything I've done, no one has ever complained about anything that I've done here about using these as different war bands or anything like that. Something like that happened to you, you chime in at the appropriate time. But so the issue here, I haven't really used these as invasion Romans or Byzantines, even though I think I probably could get away with it, because it's not as easy as you think, especially because the Byzantine board is a levy type board. And so based off this, I have 16 archers, 16 spearmen. I would need more archers, or actually crossbowmen, would be ideal. So that's a big project, trying to get late Roman plastic dudes with crossbows would be kind of a big project. And then for the levy, I have 16 guys. I need to get up to 24 for 2 points of levy. And then going back to the Roman times, they use the warrior archers, but then they use the levy infantry too. So kind of no matter how I slice it, to have a decent list for any one of those, I would have to kind of really expand out the force. And that's the reason I haven't really done it. And that is about all I have to say. Now I'm going to keep a tally here. So I got 3 warbands here in the tally. All right. Out of this one. Paint one, play many.
Indeed.
That'll be our tagline here for each one. All right. So moving on to you, I'm showing off picture of, I believe, is the Cumin warband.
Yeah.
They're mounted. They have the cool masks. And why don't you just give us a little background on these, the models, where you were in your life when you were painting these?
Sure. Yeah, so I can't exactly remember why I wanted to do Cumins. I think it was down to a combination of not having a Age of Crusades army, and then looking at the Old Friend, New Enemies, and being intrigued by Cumins. I don't think I'd ever heard of them before. And then I kind of dove into it, and it seems like there's a gigantic internet sub kind of massive amount of information, subculture, because they're in like a game called Kingdom Deliverance or something like that.
Okay.
I haven't played any computer games for a significant period, so I've completely missed that. But basically, they looked incredibly cool. They had the metal face masks, a little bit of a mix of kind of like steppe people, a little bit of like inspiration, Eastern, Western. And at that time, there was a podcast. I'm not sure if it's still ongoing, but basically the history of the Crusades. And they came to a period where they were talking about, I think, invasions of various like Hungarian kings joining crusades and all that kind of stuff, and interaction with Mongols. So I kind of got really invested in the Cumans through like clicking on various links and everything else. So I decided to do them. I'd ordered the Arab boxes from Gripping Beast, so they're just the plastic models.
That makes sense. Yeah, I can see it now.
And my aim here was to basically get a warband that was unique. As far as I know, there was no one kind of locally playing them. And I think Stephen Hollowell from the US, he actually had a Cuman warband, and he kindly shared some pictures of his warband with me. I think there was also another person with a Cuban warband in the US as well. So I was kind of reaching out to like this very small club of people with Cuman warbands for inspiration. I think it was Scott Durung. Is that?
Yeah, Scott Durung, another man. I could be doing this video with him. Actually, he's got 5 or 10 different warbands. He's got stuff I haven't even seen. So
yeah,
I
think it was heavily inspired by his warband. I think he mostly used Fireforge. I used more Gripping Beast, and I was really trying to get a good way of making like one of the metal face masks. So there's a little bit of trial and error, and in the end, I settled on one of the Gripping Beast, just guys with like just normal turbans on their heads, basically. I think it has like a helmet and a turban on the head. I basically just green stuffed like a pointy conical helm on it, which seems to be kind of like the style for the Cumans. Green stuffed some like laminar armor on their arms and legs to make them a little bit heavier, and then that was it. I just painted their face as metal, and some of the detail on the Gripping Beast models is pretty mediocre or exaggerated. So it turns out if you just paint it metal, it looks like a mask. So that was like a nice little shortcut I found.
Good at say, some of those, for lack of a better term, mongoloid Gripping Beast over exaggerated faces, probably works pretty good. Yeah, just paint a metal. It looks like the bro's wearing a mask.
Yeah, so that turned like so far nobody's ever commented on it or said anything about it. So I think I got away with it quite well. And for some of the warriors, it was very much just avoiding some of the more Turkic looking heads, sculpting like the little pointy hats that they have with like fur caps, stuff like that. So it was actually relatively simple once I got going. It's just the case of painting a lot of different horses, which is kind of where most of the effort went into. I tried to kind of use an earthy palette, but kind of I'm not sure I would do that now. I think I would use much more brighter colors, especially with horses, which tend to be a little bit brown.
This looks like JP paint style, like 1.0.
Yeah, so
it's gone a few versions since. I can see like the kind of the core, the color choices, and the shading. It's kind of there, but you kind of develop it in later warbands to your kind of own style. So
yeah, definitely. And kind of what I use them for. So I use them as step peoples in Age of Vikings. They slot in perfectly well there, also in terms of equipment choices. Obviously Cumans in Crusades, and just adding in a war drummer, and I think that's actually the only metal model in this warband. It's from Magister Militum, and then you have a perfectly serviceable Mongol warband if people don't allow old friend new enemies in a particular tournament.
So that's kind of like I want to talk about that. It's kind of like a different kind of proxy. We're not saying that these, when you're using the Mongol board with them, you're not saying that these represent Mongols, but you could, there's so many cultures and warbands and stuff like not reflected in Saga rules, but you could say, yeah, I'm just using the Mongol rules with this cumin warband. You know, these are cumins, but I'm using the Mongol rules, and that's a perfectly acceptable thing in my book. You know, and especially too when you're. I think the key is the effort is being put in. You put in a decent amount of effort, nobody is gonna kind of complain about what you're doing. So, you know, there's kind of the kind of fudging the actual, you know, we're Romans stretching the time period back and forth. For this one, we're just saying, yeah, we're just kind of using counts as rules for Mongols. And I think it totally makes sense. The play style, you know, if you're using uh Teutonic Knight war board or something, you know, obviously that wouldn't make sense. Using a Byzantine board wouldn't make sense, but using the Mongol board, that makes perfect sense. And it's another way to get some more war bands out.
Yeah, the way I look at it really is to make sure that my opponent is not confused by it.
Yes, that's key. Yeah,
I think it's pretty clear. There's a warrior with armor 3 with a bow on a horse. He doesn't. Yeah, it's pretty clear what it is. It doesn't really matter what time period you slot him into. I think there's no discussion about, oh, he actually has armor 5 or something like that. It's very obvious he has absolutely no armor. He might have a helmet, but that's about it. And he has a composite bow. Same thing with the Hearthguard, which is also why I try to put more armor on them as well, just to make it very obvious that these are kind of armor 5 guys in melee.
RPGs, baby.
Yeah. And one thing I really want to avoid, and something I also dislike when playing against people, is to not know what are warriors, what are Hearthguard, or what are levy, and try to avoid that as much as possible. For me, it makes no sense to have someone in a cataphract on a cataphract horse and him being levy or something like that. Like it just, like, even for me, and I'm quite willing to stretch kind of interpretations and historical accuracy quite far. For me, that's a little bit too far, because it's impossible to say that someone with basically like a Ferrari in today's terms, in terms of equipment, would be like a lowly levy or something in like a Hun board, something like that. So I tried to keep it a little bit like without taking the piss, if I can say that, and just showing that you've made an effort, and you kind of want to keep a theme, but it shouldn't come at the expense of making it completely unreadable for your opponent, and kind of having leaving them like with a bad taste, maybe, if they thought, oh, this was actually a Hearthguard instead of a levy or something like that. So for me, the what you see is what you get is quite high on the priority list. And for Saga, I think it's so flexible, and there's relatively few equipment options. It really shouldn't be too much of a kind of a straitjacket, and it gives you a lot of freedom to make some pretty cool warbands.
Yeah, agreed. As long as it's clear, yeah, you're pretty much halfway there. And you know, Saga's based. It's not a historical game. I don't know, how do people phrase it? You know, but it's inspired by history, not a historical game. So, got a lot of fuzzy. Just figuring out what was going on back then was pretty fuzzy, anyways. But we got a lot of leeway, I think.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's still one of my favorite warbands. I do like to take it out and play quite often, just because I've put so much effort into it, and it was a lot of green stuffing and stuff like that. And in the end, it's like an army that very few people actually have a dedicated army for. So I kind of like to. So I don't know why, but I enjoy that kind of army where nobody else has it.
Sure. Well, I like the look of these guys. You kind of. This would be a dangerous video to record, but yeah, because I want to get pretty much every warband covered, and the Mongols are so distinct. If you're using Mongol models, it's a little harder, I think, to go backwards and try to use the Mongols for something else. But the Cumans here, you know, I think there's some 3D prints now. Somebody did those. I can't Miniatures or somebody out there.
Yeah, but unfortunately they're very much foot based, the ones, or at least the ones when I checked in on it. So
okay.
you have like foot Hearthguard or something, which doesn't quite fit for this warband, unfortunately.
So might need a little version work there, but this would be a way to kind of get some multi-use out of it. I'm going to give you three armies here: steppe tribes, humans, and Mongols.
I'm going to also.
Have you used them as Huns? Be honest.
I have.
Well, you painted a Hun army here.
I have a separate Hun army because I don't feel comfortable going that far back in history.
Yeah, so that's like
to use it
1,000 years.
It was stretching it a little bit, so I thought, and I also really enjoy not painting horses, but somehow I end up painting a lot of horses. But I really enjoy different mounted warbands and some of the horses, or sorry, some of the warbands.
Sick man, JP.
But
dedication to horse flesh.
Yeah. Also, the one thing is basically the mounted horse archer is quite common, also in the different warbands, different time periods, and they don't really change except for maybe like if you get down to it, different hats and different hats, clothes. Yeah. And if you're willing to maybe push that a little bit, you can also use them for some of the Arab armies, for example, for the Saracens, because they're the
sure, yeah, the equipment options definitely line up, and you could see. We'll kind of talk about that. There's Arabs, there's Turkic factions, I think, under that Saracen umbrella. So you could say these are Saracens from way out northeast, Crimea, north of there, or kind of the Stan provinces or something. It's crazy stuff. I don't know how they do things out there, but that's a great point. Are you gonna? I'll put you down for Saracens as well. I'll give you a 4 here. And
then also partially, I'm gonna use some of these models to slot into a Assassinid warband. I just want to see if I like the play style.
Hamza's going to find you, and
Hamza will find me,
destroy you.
But also, I'm a little bit tired of painting composite bow armed warriors for a little bit. So I'm just gonna use 12, and then hopefully nobody will say anything about it.
Okay, that makes sense. I'll give you that one. We'll go for it. There's not a lot of Assassinid models or manufacturers out there, and yeah, that's fine. Right, moving on. Paint one, play many. Okay, so next up we got my Heathens. People have been seeing these a lot over the years, and this is obviously a big project. So after the Romans, I wanted definitely a multi-use kind of warband. I wanted Vikings, and I got it here. I've been working on this for years and years. The picture here doesn't include the mounted cav. Hold it up. The screen. They're up here on my painting desk because I'm painting up some more cav to go along with it. So these guys are meant to cover a whole swath of Danish, Norwegian, Swedish peoples. So I've used them as Vikings. I've used them as Yams Vikings, Pagan Rus. I've used them as Norsgales. Appropriate that is. I've used them as Saxons straight up. So that one's probably a little iffy. I've used them as Germanic peoples. 6. I've used them as pagan peoples. 7. I use them as pagan raiders. 8. I'm using them as Eastern princes. Right now, that's 9. People have told me that I could use them as Anglo-Danes as well. I don't have enough Hearthguards with heavy weapons, but I want to get some Varangian-looking dudes, so I think I'll do that at some point. I have a video about these. You can see the models all up close and stuff like that. But I wanted a bright, colorful army after the Romans that I could use for a whole bunch of different warbands, and it really has delivered. I think I'm kind of towards the end here. The last thing after the Eastern Princes is using some of these models in a Teutonic warband, where these models would be the levy troops because they used locals, they'd be the settlers or conscripts from the local area. And then the warriors and the Hearthguard would be basically, Teutonic Knights in all their glory, but these would be the kind of settlers here. JP, any thoughts about the warbands I've covered here?
I think I think you discussed with me at the time as well about using them for the pagan peoples and Lithuanians, because I think we're both kind of in the same funk around that time. But I think you were probably taking was it about 2 years, 3 years to complete the army?
Yeah, the very first build, I think, was pre-COVID Adepticon, which got canceled. And then I finished a full warband by the first Adepticon after COVID, which was about 2.5 years. And that was about 2 years since. I just been kind of plugging away on it. I'm adding Medbury Miniatures. I mean, for manufacturers, I got V&V, Brother Vinny's, Gripping Beast, the Metal Yams Vikings. Got a Warhamza model in there, some Bad Squiddo. I'm doing Medbury stuff right now. So I just, have a melange of manufacturers here, but they're just kind of tied together by look and style. And so this kind of shows what you can do if you're that guy. You got the Viking warband and games aren't going as well as you'd like and you don't know what to do. Expand them out. I think just getting some javelin dudes is probably a priority for running pagan peoples, but just a little bit of everything. And yeah, you got suitable here. We'll see. This is probably the most mileage you could get probably out of any style or look.
Yeah,
off the
agree.
top of my head, you think?
I think that's what's difficult to beat. I think you're up to 8 or 9 different warbands. So,
I gave myself 10 here, yeah.
So and each one of them are, I think, basically also in the photo you show like a war wagon or a different warlord, and I think it's such an easy way of switching out as long as you keep the base inconsistent. Like you just have a different style of warlord, because I think basically they have the most money, so they're going to have the kind of like the fanciest kit and most culturally kind of relevant kit, basically, to me. Like not a levy guy, or some levy guy is going to have like that closed mask from Sutton Hoo or something like that. Mm-hmm. He's just going to be a dude with a tunic. So I think you can really get away with a lot of things, which is one of the beauties of Saga. And you've definitely shown it with this one as well, with like these little things you can just slot in and completely change the character of the warband.
Yeah, there's a lot of troops, just the sword and board warriors. Basically, pretty much work with anything. But then you got the javelin guys for the pagan peoples, pagan raiders, Viking levy. I've got the berserkers, so they're only used with the Viking warband. I've got some heavier armored Hearthguard. I think I got 12 of them that I can use with the pagan Rus. The cav will just be used with the prince's warband. So I'm still working on this to this day. I've got basically 8 or 10 mounted Hearthguard. I'm trying to fill out the warriors. I only have 24 sword and board warriors, so I want to get that up to 32 or 40. And then I think all warband ideas or construction is going to be on the table then. So even though I have all this, I'm kind of limited in like just for Vikings what I can take. Just 3 points of warriors I'm kind of stuck with. I'd like to take more. So kind of sick of painting them, but just do 1 or 2 units a year and it's okay. So there's definitely, that's kind of the downside of doing a grand project is you want to, especially for me, I mean, some people will probably be fine, but I like every project has kind of different painting style, different methodologies, keep it fresh. So make sure you really like the style or methods you're using before you attempt this, because you've been doing it a long time. But yeah, very happy with it. Probably going to need to get that 3rd box at some point. But let's move on to your project here, JP. Oh, paint one, play many. Okay. Got some camels here, so it's got to be Mutatawiya warband. Is that the
That's
initial
correct.
kernel here?
Yeah, this is actually a funny warband. I have sold this one a few months ago, but it was actually in conjunction with the Cumans. I bought a whole bunch of Arab boxes from Gripping Beast.
Mm-hmm.
I was initially gonna do some kind of Arab army, and then I kind of went the Cuman route, and then like a year later, I still have this box of like the Arab infantry. I think you get some like 40 something models.
It's pretty much a whole warband.
Yeah, which is
waiting
basically
to go.
what you see right here. It's a whole warband, and then I needed to I think it's every single model basically from the box plus one loose warlord from which I had over from the Cumans, and then a basically blister pack of the camels. So it's not very optimal. I think the warlord should probably be on a camel as well for like more.
Yeah, or footer camel.
Yeah.
Horse.
So I do have I did have a foot warlord as well. I don't actually think I ever used this warband even once. So I painted it up, put it in the cabinet. I thought it was really nice to look at. It's got lots of bright colors. The decals. This is one of the few times I actually use the shield decals from I think it's Little Big Men Studios.
Yeah, I mean, such a good way to get models looking good. I should use it more.
It's an easy way of just putting so much color and different patterns on a warband. But if you look at the models themselves, I don't know how easy it is to zoom up in YouTube.
One unit, I can see the robes. You kind of did little dots and stuff.
Yeah, there's a few pattern, very very basic ones, and I think on it's going to be black and then a zenithal highlight of I think Xandri dust, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty quick. The robes themselves are just very low effort, and all the focus was in just putting some patterns in some key locations, putting some bright colors in their scarves, and then you really don't notice the rest. And then also just having kind of like relatively busy bases with
yeah, they look good. I was going to ask you.
Yeah, it's been probably about 5 years, so I can't remember. But my usual kind of formula, which I don't deviate too much from, is gluing on some small slate or cork pieces, and then just using like a Vallejo.
Yeah, they look so good. Those bigger kind of flattish rocks.
Yeah, those would be like the small, like really tiny slate pieces of slate, and then just like a Vallejo earth paste painted over with like some kind of brown, and then lots of dry brushing, and then kind of what I do in the end, and especially for the Arabs and the Cumans, is I put in pigments, so rust pigments, burnt ochre pigments, something like that. It just makes it so much more natural for basically no effort whatsoever. But something people should definitely
putting the pigments on the models.
No,
or on
on the bases themselves.
The bases, the ground. Okay.
Although using shading with pigments as well on robes is also a very very easy way of getting some good results quickly. But I don't think I actually used it for this particular warband.
Sure. Okay. So for selection here, if this is everything, it's probably just going to be the Mutatawiya. We'll give you. So I think the thing with these Muslim warbands is, so these models are really more specifically kind of like Berber culture, I think, with what white guys think of, flowing robes and full covering of cloth and face and stuff. Is specifically more kind of Berber, which is part, when you think of the Moors, they're half, the Arabs are kind of the bosses, and then the Berbers, they'd always recruit and bring them over. So I think mixing them in and using them as a Moors warband, I think you could definitely get away with it. For Saracens, then, we're getting to the Arab and kind of Turkic peoples. I think for Saga, it's perfectly fine. You know, if you filled this out with the appropriate troop types, it's going to complain. You running them as a Saracen war. I think, are they sold as Saracens? They're sold as Arab.
Yeah, I think
Arab
just
infantry.
generic. I don't think I have the box anymore, but they also Gripping Beast basically puts
Or
a very
Muslim
light.
infantry, maybe. That might be what.
Yeah,
Trying to think what.
I honestly can't remember. It's been a few years, but I
Yeah.
think it covers such a large time period. You can get with away with almost anything.
Yeah. But if you look at like Reconquer Designs or something, he's got Moorish stuff, and then he also has like Saracen type, Arab kind of Turkish looking tree, and they look quite different. But for Saga, it's good enough. I'll give you 3 for this one. This version, I think it technically would be 1, but we know you could expand it out.
I think you could probably also get away with maybe if you put in some extra Hearthguard Umayyads, like they're pretty
give you
foot
4.
based, but that would require some extra effort. So
yeah, so the Muslim armies are a little trickier to actually do a multi because you have so many. You got javelin.
They just have too many equipment options.
Yeah, composite bow troops. You got the camels. You got crossbow infantry with the other ones. So you gotta, probably paint like almost another warband's worth of troops to kind of cover all your options. But then once you may paint 12 points to cover 18 points worth of different warbands or something like that. So not as much as a slam dunk as some of the other ones, but we'll give it to you. All right. Moving on. Paint 1. Way many. All right. Getting into more modern times here for me. I painted last year. These are my Ancients army, which I'm using as Carthaginians out the gate here. And you can see once we zoom in, the problem is I made a mistake and painted too many Numidian horsemen to use. So now I'm obligated to keep going and do a Numidian warband out of these as well. I've got some Greek mercenaries, so I could shunt that out into a Taliotes or kind of just keep going, do a Theban or just kind of a generic Greek warband. I've got the kind of phalangite dudes with spears. You could use those straight up in successors. Got the cavalry, the Hearthguard Cav can be used in successors. Right now, Carthaginians, Midians, Italiotes, Greeks, successors. I think that's 5. It could even kind of work in some Gauls or Iberians as part of the Carthaginian force, and split those out. But no real plans to do that. But any comments or issues with what I've said, JP?
No, I think the Carthaginians are probably the best place to branch out of. I think also in terms of Hannibal and Hannibal and Alexander combined, probably the most effective way is painting some kind of generic Greek warband. And then, but even there, they have some pretty specific equipment options per sub faction. So you'll probably end up maybe using some of the levies as like the bow or javelin levies as kind of combined, but then various warriors with or without sarissas, with or without javelins, and Hearthguard with or without sarissas as well. So I think you end up painting probably more than you'd expect.
The potential is there, but it's kind of like with the Muslims, the equipment options to have everything. You're saving a little bit per warband, recycling a few points here or there, but you're kind of, I'm doing Numidians or whatever next, let's say, So I've already got 3 points of horsemen, so I'm really just, if I paint 3 more points, I get a full warband. Or if I go to successors, I got the Hearthguard, I got some warriors. So I need to paint like 3.5 more points to get to a successor warband. So it's kind of like a little discount off the top, but you are kind of, you got to paint quite a bit. This is going to be another 3-boxer by the time I'm done here, but I'm pretty happy with the amount of time spent on these. The basing is Lucap spacing material and there's nothing underneath it. I just glued it over the wood or plastic bases, so not even having to do anything with the bases. I use a lot of speed paints. Most of it starts with speed paints, and it kind of goes into manual highlights, but not sick of it by any stretch. Painting. Not my favorite Saga time period, so this one will rely on tournament impetus to get me to paint some more, where I can just keep adding Heathens for fun, but these I need a kind of a reason and a warband to shoot for before I can consider adding more to it or kind of make the effort. But it's definitely Age of Victrix here. I think much everything. I mean, the chariots are kind of a conversion from War Gods of Egyptus and some Byzantine cataphract horses that I had. Those are
All right.
2,000 years
like
from the future.
Take up a lot of space on the battlefield as well.
Yeah, I mean, is what it, 4-horse chariot at that kind of heroic scale. That is what it is. It's too big, kind of annoying. Hit like a box of rocks, so I enjoy that aspect. But all right, so give myself 5 here. Potential's there to squeeze out some more, but I honestly don't really have any plans for that in the next 5 years. So it's definitely not going to happen in the next 10 years based off my paint speed. All right, moving on. Paint 1, play many. We are looking at, this is kind of an invasions warband, I think.
It could be, but this is
Gripping Beast. What
yes.
are these?
These are my generic Germanic guys.
Germanics. I like the ring there. Generic Germanics.
Yeah, so it's basically it is my it's the Gripping Beast Dark Age Warriors kit combined with the Hearthguard coming from the Roman kit.
Okay.
And then just the green stuffing over like the more Roman elements of their equipment, and also
circles.
Yeah,
the little circles on their thing.
Yeah, on their tunics, and then also just swapping in some different helmets basically to avoid some of the more Roman style helmets. However, based on kind of the invasions era, a lot of kind of the more elite warriors were in service of Rome at some point anyway, or tried to emulate it anyway. So they would have a degree of Roman equipment, especially like Franks, Saxons, Goths. They were kind of one way of getting rich was through just service with Rome. So there it makes it quite easy. The Dark Age Warrior aspect of it as well, it's so incredibly generic and such a good kit that the only differentiating factor here really is the shield patterns.
Sure.
I think there you can really, for example, I think some of the more like Norman or I guess even like Welsh or something like that, they have much more distinct shield patterns. I'm not sure how accurate it is in terms of history. However, kind of like the vibe or the kind of the customs that have grown up with the Saga community have kind of mean like, okay, if you're Welsh, you need a yellow shield.
Somehow yellow and
yeah,
green got associated with Irish stuff like that. We'll see that shortly, but
yeah,
I mean, if you go to the Little Big Man site and he's got a decal for it, it's got to be legit. It's got to be good. Good
exactly.
To go. It's good enough for me.
So these guys are was the first time actually not the first time, unfortunately, but one of the things I basically did was just paint them or prime them Army Painter Fur Brown. This is probably one of the best colors as a starting point for any Saga armies, because you can have basically a instant skipping of everything related to belts,
are done. The boots,
shoes
are done. The spear haft is
It's pretty much done as well. What you will notice is people don't tend to look at trousers whatsoever. So if you're in a little
I
bit of a
agree.
bind
Yeah.
for a tournament or something like that, just fur brown plus a wash, you're good to go on literally 50% of the model. It's also a very good starting point for skin. So it's just all around a very solid solid starting point. So I think I finished this warband quite quickly, and the only difference here is I just swapped out some helmets. I asked my local gaming buddies if they had some of the Saxon, the Viking, and also Gripping Beast actually has some really nice helmets in their cavalry boxes as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a whole mix of those types of helmets just put together. And I think the only kind of conversion or green stuff was, except for like covering the little tunics of the Romans, was my warlord, where I took an Arab helmet and basically put like side cheeks in to make it more
Oh,
more Germanic looking.
sculpted some cheekers.
But nobody, yeah, I think there it's basically just focusing in on what I wanted to do was a relatively quick warband that looks good, lots of light colors, and I put most of the effort into the shields themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's kind of like
really good.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to avoid was like the dark look I had with my humans, and that I see a lot of people do with Dark Age armies, that they think everything has to be various shades of brown.
Mm-hmm.
I think the shields and some of the tunics are really good ways of just getting lots of color on the table, and it just makes it so much more pleasant. Also, a lot of tournaments have pretty bad lighting in the halls.
They do, yeah.
So if you
Not
want
as
your
good
chances,
as your paint table.
yeah,
For
if you
sure.
want some like a chance for like a painting prize or some painting points in tournaments, it's really good to just use slightly obnoxious, colorful colors on your warband just to make it pop.
Just go one step higher than what you know I think is appropriate. Is kind of a good rule of thumb.
Yeah,
Me,
and
but
in terms of patterns, it was just looking at the Little Big Man Studio website, some sources in terms
there we
of
go. Yeah.
yeah, I forgot what the actual like the Romans published some kind of codex with kind of like barbarian shield patterns, etc. So I took some of the inspiration from those and kind of just went nuts with it. And it's just a really good way of practicing your freehand as well. And people tend to be more impressed with freehand shields, even though the patterns are relatively simple compared to decals.
True. So I'll say once you start doing them, you get like really quick at them. So like I've got that Raven kind of design on my Heathens, and the first one took a lot of futzing around, but I can do it in like I can do like in less than like 30 seconds. I can bang that out. You just build up that muscle memory. You kind of know like what looks good, what doesn't. So yeah, great looking warband. Now for the count here, why don't you hit me with
Sure.
the warbands you can count it as?
Yeah, so I've actually painted more Dark Age warriors since then,
Okay.
so I can use them as Anglo-Saxons.
Okay, that was going to be the
Saxons.
one that I was going to mention if you hadn't considered. But so the
Yeah,
Anglo Saxons are kind of real early, early Dark Age. What the
yeah.
Vikings were fighting. So they're just a couple generations removed from these guys basically. So I think that's definitely appropriate. So Anglo Saxons. What else?
Uh, the Saxons from Invasions.
Mm-hmm.
There I have a separate warlord who looks a little bit more Saxony.
Terrific.
I use them for the Franks.
Yeah, I think that's
I've
good.
used them for the foot version of the Goths, or the Visigoths.
Definitely, yeah. Or
Um, and basically they're just a really good way of getting some generic troops on the table. Sometimes like when you want to for example in you want to use some like melee levy or something like that, these guys will just kind of slot in. If I just need to make if I only have like 1 point and I want to run 1.5 point, I'll just throw in 6 of these guys and then nobody's really going to
sneak them
notice.
in.
So I think one reason I use these ones as well, they're really good for traveling. It's all plastic,
Durable, yeah.
super durable. So far, not a single. I think maybe one shield has fallen off, and that's about it. So they're just really good. Just to throw in like a box, take them to a tournament. You don't really care if people handle them or if you end up picking up like a handful of them. So I think for that, they're just really, really, really good. And it's also nice to show that even though the Grip and Beast Dark Age Warriors box is kind of showing its age at the moment, if you paint them up nicely, they still can hold up really well compared to some of the more newer kits out there.
Definitely. Now, you got 4. What do you think about slotting these in as Britons?
I still have about half a box, and I have the helmets for it. So I've just been waiting for a kind of like a reason to paint them, but I'm not super inspired by the Britain battle board at the
battle
moment.
Board, it's not enticing you.
But it will happen at some point. I'll probably just like paint up. I think I have an Arthur Warlord waiting to be painted anyway, so that might be the trigger of kind of like painting up some more Britain-looking guys. Yeah, so I've already painted him up, and I have another one. So,
okay.
But we'll see. But I think there it's also such a good way. You can just put on the little the Roman what's it called, the Chi-Rho symbol on their shields, and it basically completely changes the character of the warband as well.
So yeah, we'll give you a 5 for this one. I think with the Britons, people more typically would try to slot that into like a Roman style and do like kind of a Roman Briton type warband. Yeah, they could straddle both of those. But yeah, I think we could use these though. All right, paint 1, play many. Next up for me, these are the Warband Challenge. Mutatawia here. So using Reconquer Designs, use some oils, and try to make a relatively quick paint job on these with an interesting style. So yeah, I painted these up for the Warband Challenge. Like, did you say you hadn't played your mutts and then you sold them?
Yep.
Okay.
A maximum, maybe. I think I used them as like Moors or something before selling them.
Yeah. So I still have not played these. So the problem with the Warband Challenge, I'm squeezing out extra time to paint more models, which definitely worked, but I can't squeeze out any more time to play more games accordingly. So these have kind of been sitting on the shelf. So a lot of the comments that we said about your mutts apply here. So these are definitely more Berber style of models, I think specifically the long robes and stuff like that, but definitely can fill it out and use them as Moors or eventually Saracens. Give myself a 3 there. 4 for Umayyads. Bang that out. Gotta do that. But yeah, happy with these guys. Relatively quick. Wish I'll find the time to play them at some point here, but very happy with how they turn out. Any random thoughts or comments?
No, I'm actually completely out of the loop of 3D printed armies, so it's always nice to see them.
These are, or Etsy. These all came from Etsy, basically. Terry, Chicago Saga guy, sent me a unit when I was in a pinch, but I have since got a 3D printer myself, and so the quality with the Etsy stuff was hit or miss. Some of the comments I said about 3D printing really just apply to Etsy sellers, I think, because everything I've done so far has been like spot on, definitely meets my standards. So I'm looking forward to firing up the printer, getting some reinforcements. But first, got to play these bad boys. So out of the box, not usable as anything but mutts with this configuration, but we gave you the extra points for the possible expansions, so we'll do the same here. Paint 1, play many. All right, we are looking at, is this the dreaded Mounted Welsh?
Indeed.
Warband? This
was, I think it was inspired by Monty, actually. I think he has a Mounted Welsh warband as well. I really like the footsore models, so all of these are footsore miniatures models, and I started painting up the Picts, and then I wanted some mounted models, and then I bought was talking to one of the players locally, and he had basically a whole bunch of unpainted models from Footsore he wanted to get rid of. So I picked up the rest of the warband, and then I just kind of like, I was like, okay, I guess I have them anyway. Might as well start painting them. This warband was really actually spent quite a lot of time on it, in terms of just how also focusing on the hand painted shields. They do have like the little tiny bucklers, so that's a little bit easier. And what I basically did on the horses was I was trying to figure out some shortcuts of how to get them on the table as quickly as possible. So I think there is actually a video on the YouTube channel. To
use some under.
Yeah, so it's really basic. It's using my trusty,
what I called it, anti-zenithal, Nadiral shading, whatever you want to.
Yeah, it's really simple, but if you make the horses a little bit light, it also helps the general look of the warband as well, not to make them just like a brown blob. And then just focus.
Metal horses here.
Yeah, they're all
so they're a little smaller, I think, so probably a little easier to paint. You don't have quite as big, wide open areas that you're trying to decide. Do you leave it plain or you try to highlight it or something like that? So just less volume.
Yeah, so I don't think I highlighted the horses at all. I think I did a few with like some white blotches, but kind of discontinued that pretty quickly. And then I just focused on the riders themselves. And it was mostly just zenithal highlights, like what you said, some shading on the bottom, and then like a really, really thin wash to tie everything together and kind of make it look like it wasn't that powdery dryness where you get with the airbrush. So in terms of the horses themselves, it wasn't a massive deal. And I am at the moment considering whether or not I want to paint an extra unit of mounted warriors to kind of make it complete. Because
it looks like you got a personal champion or something in there to get it up to 6 points.
Yeah, there's a personal champion, which is actually pretty good. And then I also have 2 points of Hearthguard, but I'll probably just throw them in with like and kind of hide them between the warriors to get like a stealthy extra 8 models on the table. Sure. And then I need to figure out like an extra point. But I'm thinking about taking them to the German Grand Melee, so I need to get my act together pretty quickly.
Okay.
So
all right.
Whether or not I want to inflict pain on myself or not. But in terms of the paint one, play many, this is probably one of the least efficient ways of doing it. So I would not recommend. You can use it in the Age of Invasions with the Menat and Gododin warband. So it's basically the mounted Welsh, but the Hearthguards are basically just mounted without special equipment.
So this one, it's a little tougher because everything has javelins. So I think you could squeeze a little more out of it if you were comfortable saying, they're just regular mounted guys or something like that. So some people will be fine with that. It kind of goes back to that what you see is what you get argument. Whether it's confusing or not. But you do have another one. I think you're using these as picked Hearthguard.
Yeah, right? So the Hearthguard I have used as picked as well. I mean, in the end, I don't think I actually used the picked Hearthguard very much. The guys on foot are just too good.
Monty regrets taking them in the last game that we played. So you may or may not need them, but
they are there. They're available. Some of them have like the little weird shield shapes that the Picts seem to enjoy. But their main use is the mounted Welsh.
Sure. Yeah. Off the top of my head, can't think of much else to use it as. So
I mean, possibly whatever. Scots. Yep. They could take mounted Hearthguard as well. Hearthguard, but some of the guys here have like a javelin in their kind of like their shield arm as well. So I think there we run into the issue of making it a little bit confusing for your enemy or your opponent.
A little too far there, probably. Yeah, I agree. The javelin, it's tough to have that count as a spear. And it's just kind of confusing. At one point, your opponent charges in, if you're foot guys or you close ranks, and you're like, oh, that's right, you are just regular special equipment. Well, that kind of threw your calculations off, I think, if you thought you were going into some crunchy javelin boys and there's no special equipment. So, yeah, that's fine. You do get to share a few models at least. Paint one, play many. So this goes into my. It's not they're not, but I'm using the Irish. So this is the. I think this is the last army I have to share. I haven't painted anything since. So this is for Adepticon of this year. It's kind of a speed paint project where I do some base coats, get some speed paints, do some Nadural shading, and I can't get bright enough. This is as bright, the absolute brightest you can get these models here. So normally I like to experiment with warm and cold, warm shadows, cold highlights, or warm shadows, cold highlights, or cold shadows, warm highlights. This one is warm shadows, warm highlights. We're just going for pure heat. So this was built out of the Gripping Beast and the Wargames Atlantic sets, and I just pilfered every random javelin looking shaft I had from my bits box. Used a lot of different heads. Actually, the heads were pretty good on the Gripping Beast, those Irish sets. So it's Irish, Pict, and Welsh sets. They're just slightly different between them. So I think I had all three. Mixing them between, but it says predominantly javelin boys here. So use them as Irish straight up. I could use these as foot Welsh. Actually for Welsh, I kind of prefer like what you have there for Welsh, but I'm not going to do another horde of javelin guys.
It's a lot of commitment in terms of just building and painting the mounted Welsh. Yes. So I would not recommend it if you want to finish it this decade.
Your look for the Welsh, I think, is probably more accurate, probably better. But we're in the fuzzy Saga historicals. People seem to just mix and match the Irish and the Welsh, and it might just be because they're both equipped with javelins. But that is the case here. I would like to expand these out into the picks, but it's quite a haul. So I need sword and board warriors, crossbow levy, mounted Hearthguard if I want to use them, a chariot if I want to use it. So it's almost painting a completely new warband. But if I do that, that would be a nice kernel for a Scott warband. Just the warriors on foot, some slingers, they're mounted Hearthguard. So I want to expand it out to a few more warband options. Give myself a 4 for that, I guess. It does work for the old friend, new enemies in the invasions. The Kimry? I don't know. There's a few. Yeah. There's 2 or 3 there. I guess you could slot them in for at least one of those. But mostly just an Irish warband. But the potential's there to expand it out. Any random thoughts on these boys, JP?
No, just the painting itself is really distinct. So I think the kind of pumping up the contrast and I'm not sure what the correct term is, just the amount of pigment is
kind of saturation.
Yeah, that's the one. Like, makes it it's going to be very, very visible on the board, which is great. And one thing I don't think you said anything about the guys with the Dane axes. Are those just from the box, or are they conversions as well?
Oh, those are, yeah. So for the heroes, the javelin heroes, I just pilfered from my bits, So I think 2 of those are like Gallic fighters or something. I don't know where they came from. The other guys, they do come from. I think I got the Anglo-Dane sprue, just a sprue, and I think I got like a maybe like a late Roman sprue, and somehow between all that, with what I had kit bashed. So those would be the Kure with heavy weapon options. So those are when I'm just playing the local dudes. I'll break those out instead of the Javelin boys, just to kind of keep it fun and interesting. And yeah, put the cloaks on them. So really happy with how they turned out, especially for the time commitment. So I haven't really, I don't know, after Adepticon, I just kind of put them in the closet. I haven't broken back out. I do got to take some photos. I know I got to like, the couple of photos I took, I didn't varnish these or anything. So the kind of the shine and satin is really bugging me in photos. So I'm going to go back and varnish them, and then we'll see how they look. I might need to do another highlight at that point. Potentially, I haven't ruled it out, but pushing the color, saturation, everything to its max, just with everything that I know. So yeah, worked out pretty well. I might do similar techniques on future warbands here, just bang out a whole horde of them. But that's it for these guys. So this is the last one I have to share. Paint one, play many. And we're just on JP's territory here. So it looks like the Victrix box or sprues or a couple kits here.
It's primarily the Victrix Anglo-Dane kits, and then in the back there are some archers, and the archers themselves also made from the Victrix Anglo-Dane kit. This was before they came out with a separate a kit for the archers. I think there was a gap of about 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. So I think I used some of the extra arms from probably, I don't know, the Arabs, maybe.
Yeah, you're not, especially with those Arab. I think all of the kits come with archer arms.
So I think I used some of those, and then extra quivers and everything else was no issue. And then basically just to be able to make a complete warband. This was I made this one for my brother. He's kind of like he's always wargamed with me in the past.
Cool.
And then so I thought, okay, we finally moved to be living in the same country together. So I thought we would finally have some time to play some war games. But he's got 4 kids. I've got 1 kid, so it's kind of like for the last 3 years now that these guys have been completed, we haven't really managed to find an evening to spend some time to do some war gaming together. So officially, these are earmarked as being his war band. I have added an extra unit of warriors for them as well. So it's got a pretty complete warband, and I basically at the moment just use it as a demo army because it looks quite nice. Everyone likes the Anglo-Danes. Perfect. The shields are nice and colorful. But basically, this is it turned out really well, and I'm happy with it. But it was quite a quick warband. I think I did everything within about 30 days. So it was a lot of basically the tried and tested army painter fur brown. And if you zoom in on some of the pictures with the leather, it's just no highlights whatsoever. It's just army painter fur brown, and then probably army painter. What's the dark wash? Basically the dark brown wash.
Strong tone.
Yeah, I think it's that one. And then same thing for all of the colors. I think some of the blues I've probably used a blue wash over basically base coat. So it's not far from just purely dipping it. But the Victrix models just have like a lot of really nice definition, so it makes it quite quick. And then adding in the hand painted shield just kind of makes or distracts from kind of like the less well painted model. So it's like a quick hack of just making sure people actually focus on the shields rather than the model themselves. Sure. In terms of being able to use it for other things, I think this is kind of like a dead end in terms of just the aesthetics is so specific to Anglo-Danes, especially on the Hearthguard with Dane axes.
Sure, they're only Anglo-Dane. I don't know.
Yeah, they're quite specific. Gonna
slot this into Vikings, and then everything that Vikings can be, or not. I think. So the infantry, are those Viking infantry? Like
no,
the warriors?
everything is just from the Anglo-Danes kit.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think
So they have their own sprues.
yeah,
Okay.
they have their own sprue. I don't think the Vikings were out yet when I painted this one, but it's basically a you with Victrix they tend not to give enough unarmored bodies in their kind of like their
Sure.
mixed kits. So that's why I went heavy on the Hearthguard. Also, it wasn't really the most optimal list. It was more just that I could play some games
So
with
these
my
are
brother.
more uniquely Anglo-Dang specific, and so um, some folks would. I think you could get away with it. You know, just use them as kind of your Dark Age
Yeah, I think it's a good
Viking
start
bros,
for
probably.
Anglo-Saxons as well if you want to go the
Yeah,
Victrix
yeah,
route
definitely
instead of
Anglo-Saxons.
yeah, it's just a
For
lot. It would require a lot
we'll
more
give it to you
painting,
there.
which I tend to basically finish a project and then just not paint anything
Never
extra
go
for it.
back.
Just
Okay, yeah, I'm more of a just go back and add stuff. It's easier than doing something new for me. So different schools of thought. All right, paint one, play many. Moving on to the Hun warband. So these are, I was kind of wondering, the composite bow warriors, those are different bow warriors than the Cumin warband we saw, or are you
yeah.
sharing?
No, these are
These are different ones.
zero sharing between these. So these
Okay.
are the metal footsore
Okay.
Huns. I think I basically at some day, I think it was just during the pandemic, I was just ordering random stuff, and I thought, why not order an entire Hun warband? I think I just finished the Cumans as well, so I'm not sure exactly what my thought process was. Um, but here I've got three, what is it, 3.5 points of mounted warriors, and then 1.5 point of levies, and then I basically slot in some either archers or what is it, levies with no special equipment options for the Huns,
Sure, yeah.
and those basically I can just grab from any other warband depending on the requirement. Especially with the Huns, they basically just impressed people to fight for them, especially as levies. So the kind of like the different styles doesn't bother me too much. This is probably one of my better painted warbands.
Yeah, I definitely agree to that.
I went full out on all of the horses, highlighting everything. Here I also used the oil washes to make some of the kind of like the splits between the reins and the horses themselves, and also to accentuate some of the kind of shadows in the warriors themselves. I distinctly remember just painting 2 models per time. So I would take about 2 days, 2 nights
Wow. Okay.
to paint 2 guys.
Kind of
And
keeping for fun levels, kind of keeping that
yeah, so I
high,
would
or is that
basically, yeah, I would say, okay, tonight I'm painting like blue jackets and green trousers, and then that way it was relatively quick to do it, and then I would just kind of like make sure I wouldn't have too many repeat colors in the warband themselves, and it was a relatively efficient way. I think this was also during the pandemic, so I didn't have to commute or anything else like that.
mm-hmm.
So I had a little bit more time than I do now. Um, but yeah, I was going for basically an army that would be able to win like a best painted prize. So I don't think I've actually taken it to a tournament since then. But it was my intention to put in a lot of effort and kind of like win a prize. So I might see if I can take it to one of the larger tournaments here.
Definitely.
But I think also the Hun. What's it called? The reputation makes it a little bit difficult because I'm to take them sometimes because some people think it's not super fun to play against them. But
Sure. Yeah.
but so I need to get over that and just bring them to a tournament.
Bring it. Just bring it, dog. All right. So yeah, great looking models. So warband, I think counts the Huns. I think definitely steppe tribes for Vikings would be appropriate. Anything else that you've considered?
For some of the mercenary options,
Oh,
You
yeah.
can just use a bunch of warriors for that. But yeah, I mean, it doesn't, to be honest, it doesn't make a lot of sense that I have both humans and like a specific Hun warband.
Yeah.
Like it's a difficult one to explain to people. But I'm quite happy with the overall
Oh,
effect,
yeah.
and it's also kind of one of my better painted warbands.
Yeah, it's definitely not a waste. I mean, you can paint similar war bands with different styles, different techniques. It's part of the hobby, part of having fun. So definitely not a waste of effort.
No, and it was probably one of the more fun ones I painted because I wasn't planning on taking them, mentally I said I was just going to paint them as well as possible. So it wasn't really like a pressure for painting like 8 warriors within a week to get to a tournament or something like that. So that tends to make it a lot more relaxed and a lot more fun
Awesome.
to do these warbands.
Yeah, just a fun project. So yeah, turned out great. Paint one, play many. Right, we got 2 more for you. Don't quite have a full wide shot, but we're looking at the Polish warband that you did. And
Yeah.
these guys are, those knights are like awesome. Yeah. Pinnacle JP painting style there on
Thank
those
you.
knights, I would say.
Yeah, the Reds and I think for the Polish, basically, I wanted to play them because nobody played them, and people said they were really difficult to win with. They are indeed really difficult to win with, so can confirm. But they are a lot of fun, and I recently took the Polish warband to Poland to play some games as well, and I'm kind of getting the hang of them a little bit. A lot is down to luck and rolling well, but
Sure, yeah. Tough to build
but
synergy. It's just kind of a
yeah,
veterans board. Play clean. Use your one ability you can use at this time, and
that and also people
the
have no
dice.
idea about the board itself because they see it so rarely. So that's probably the best part of the board that people are surprised by, like Terror of the East and the Clash and stuff like that. Because you can basically just completely shut down someone's turn and then do it once, and then you hope you inflict damage. If you fluff the roll, you're kind of screwed. But and that's
Yeah,
part of the fun, I guess. One thing which is really nice with the Polish is that you can use like really bright colors, lots of heraldry, stuff like that, and just go to town on that side. Um, I have looked what I need to do to expand it and use it for Crusaders as well, because that would be a
definitely.
natural kind of thing you can slot it in with. All of the models are from the Footsore line, the Barons War line, so it's a little bit ambiguous. It's kind of like a Western Polish warband. Nothing says, nothing stopping me from basically using it as Crusaders as well. And some of the levy and I think I painted up some new levy models as well, also using the Footsore models with the pikes recently. So it's
Yeah,
a little bit of a crossover into like the late Crusades and early Age of Chivalry, especially
yeah.
in kind of
I
like
was gonna say there. We know quite a bit about chivalry stuff. I guess we'll kind of see when the book comes out what war bands and models and stuff they use to kind of demonstrate kind of what they're going for. But yeah, this is kind of the tail end of Crusades era time wise, and so especially those helmets with like the brim, for like the little foot sloggers.
yeah.
That to me is more like chivalry type era with those guys. But with the pole arms and the two-handed weapons, the knights, the by the end of chivalry, it's full plate and stuff like that. So this is kind of the first wave of chivalry, I would
Yeah,
say. I
even
can't
the
really see what
early
armor
chivalry.
these guys, but it's
Yeah,
predominantly chainmail, I assume.
yeah, even the kind of like the early chivalry, they were much more, or didn't quite have like the full plate which we think of, and like the Agincourt and stuff like that. It was much more in this style, especially like some of the war bands, or some of the battle boards, like the Flemish. They're basically inspired by the Battle of the Golden Spurs, which was 1300s or 1301. So it would be I would feel pretty confident and comfortable to use them for kind of like the early chivalry. However, like the chivalry just covers such a large time period. It's and kind of like the technology goes, um, yeah, changes so much over that time period. It makes it very difficult to mix the two, kind of like the early and the late periods.
Yeah.
But I
Probably say
mean,
the Polish would be good for that. The other one might be the Teutonic Knights. I don't know, kind of the big armor style. I guess we'll
yeah.
we'll see. I speaking with much confidence here, but be my guess. But
No, I think I'm using these for pulls and then Crusaders because I have some crossbow guys as well. And then
okay.
I am using some of the foot slogging guys and some of the knights. I'm painting. I have some extra ones which I'm going to be painting up to like Flemish livery for the Flemish list in Age of Chivalry.
Sounds
And then I think
good.
that's kind of like pushing the limits a little bit of
We'll give
what
you
you can do.
We'll give you 3 for this one here. All right, paint one, play many. All right, last one here. Just got the wide shot. Don't have any close-ups. Just looks like a pure Invasions Roman warband. Is that
That's
what
right.
we're looking here?
It's using exactly the same box as you were using, however, with less effort. I'm just using them straight up from the sprue. Same thing with the cavalry. I think the only difference there is I bought the light cavalry and then realized I didn't actually want to use them as light cavalry. They were like a little bit too light to be able to use for Hearthguard. So I switched in some of the lamellar torsos from the Arab kit.
Oh, okay.
To
Cool.
make them like heavier. Same thing with the warlord. I just sculpted on some green stuff there for his like, I don't know what the little leather flaps are that the Romans have. But yeah, it's a really nice kind of like almost indestructible warband in terms of just everything's plastic, gripping beast. You can throw them into a box, bring them to a tournament, and then they're going to be perfectly fine at the end of the day. And then for the Mana Ballista, it was just an MDF Mana Ballista. I think from War Bases, it cost me like £1.50 back in the day. So
And a couple spear dudes, crewmen for it.
Yeah, basically that. And I think I was going for basically like a really cheap build because I wasn't sure if I actually wanted to play these guys. So it's basically like the Roman box, which is like €25, the MDF Mana Ballista, which is like €1.50, and then some extra guys from for the Hearthguard. So I think that's what I was going for. In the end, I actually really like the way they turned out, and just the uniform is really cool and nice to see on the table. And it's not something you generally can pull off with like other armies. So it's a nice little way of getting everything together, and it's visually very very appealing for people.
Looks good. Yeah, very distinct. Would you use these as Britons? Just straight up?
No, I would.
Would you feel comfortable?
No, I think I would use them as I would use my Germanic guys more as Britons with like extra guys thrown in as with some slightly different shields. So maybe like a mix 50-50 that I could pull that off, just to kind of dilute the most Roman parts of it. And yeah, some of the archers, they're probably okay. You could get away with it. I mean, in the end, it's very clear what the models are. It's just warriors with
I think
no
so.
special equipment.
I think some people would be fine just using them straight up. Yeah, because some people just envision the Britons more as like the Romans that didn't go back. Just kind of voluntarily stayed. So there'd be a period where they're just using the same kit for a generation or two.
Yeah, I guess it depends if you catch them early on or late on in their transformation journey before they become the Welsh, basically.
Right. Now, would you use these as last Romans in Viking
times? I don't think I could get away with it. Also, Hamza would hear of it Roman, somehow, and then he would fly over and torch my house.
All right. Well, I'll give you 2 for that. And that's the last one that we have. You do have additional war bands that we don't have photos for. We're kind of pushing our time limit here as well. But that was a fun discussion. So I added up the counts of the warbands, and so we both came out with 26. So
Not bad.
Just based off these, it's kind of a tie for number of warbands we could run. But you have additional warbands, so I will cede the victory to you. I don't have anything else in the hopper at the moment. But that was also kind of a wish list too, where the mutts we could be expanded into 3 or 4 warbands, but based off what we had, it's just 1 currently. But I gave us both 3 or 4 or whatever for that. So when the rubber meets the road, I'm probably about half that number as far as warbands I could just field today with the models that I have. I feel like you're probably a little higher on that number as well. Less wish list versus mine, kind of theories and ideas.
Yeah, I counted up the number of warbands which I have without having to borrow within the warbands. So I painted up 22 warbands for Saga. I've sold 3 of them, and then I've got two work in progress at the moment. So once you kind of add in all the different potentials and swaps, I think I can probably cover most warbands, at least in Dark Ages, Crusades, and Vikings.
Yeah,
Ancients,
that's awesome.
Yeah, Ancients, Hannibal is a little bit more. I'm still working on those, but a little bit less motivated for those eras.
Yeah, so the great thing about Saga, we're kind of getting some bang for our buck here. Hopefully that gave you some ideas on what you might be able to do with what you have currently and how you might flesh it out, get additional warbands, just what from you have. I think Saga is a unique game where the veterans don't stick. If you play Warhammer or whatever, you become like the Wood Elf guy, or that's the only thing that you play. Where in Saga, people are like, please play something different. I'm tired of playing against you. Please choose a different warband. And I think so veterans tend to just accumulate a bunch of warbands. It's fun just trying different play styles, but using your same models if you can do it. And this was a fun discussion. And like I said, based off stuff I've used, no one's ever complained about anything. I think the Saga community is inspired by history, but isn't beholden to it maybe in the way that other games are, or maybe we just perceive them that way, or random internet comment guys think that. But yeah, Saga, as long as kind of hitting the what you see is what you get part, I think is the most important part. And having the composite bows, if you have composite bows, having them be clearly spear and shield guys, not slingers or something like that. So JP, we were kind of a little chat before, so we just kind of had an overview of these armies. So we might have you back on to kind of dive in a little bit deeper into the painting and construction of some of these armies. Does that sound good? Would you like to do that sometime?
Absolutely, sounds great.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll do that. I would like to kind of take a closer look at some well-painted armies from here on out from some of the fans. And it's pretty much going to be it. I guess I would ask you guys to comment below with your thoughts if we went too far or didn't go far enough, or if you have multi-use warbands like this, paint one, play many, I'd be interested to hear it. Got to give thanks to Patrick, Sean, Mitchell, Scott, Frank, Britt, DJ, and the rest of the Saga Thursday patrons. Wouldn't be doing these extra videos. JP, you are a patron as well. Thank you, sir, for a long time support. Really appreciate it. And I think that is going to be it for this one. So we'll catch you on the next one, folks. Have a good one. See ya. Saga! If you'd like to see more Saga content, consider joining the Heathen Army over on Patreon or popping on down to the Saga Thursday Discord server. Links below. Thanks, guys.